Well, if you're not too fond of the slog and the mental drain of some of these more complicated Lorcana decks, Emerald Amethyst might be a deck for you to consider. It is a very strong aggro option, probably the strongest aggro deck in the format, and here you can see in this matchup we're going up against another aggro deck in my friend's Amber Amethyst. They mentioned that they wanted to continue to test this deck. It's very good into the like Sapphire heavy decks, but it does suffer, they said, into other aggro decks, this one in particular, and you're going to kind of see how this match plays out. To start off, we are on the draw. The opponent is on the play for game one, and then we'll be on the play for game two, so again, simulating a best of two format. But again, check out the deck profile video if you haven't seen that already, where we break down this deck, the card choices, and some of the interactions that we go for. And then following up from this video, I will post a matchup against Ruby Sapphire against this deck, which we know this deck should have a pretty strong matchup into Ruby Sapphire, but they did get a very strong tool in the new Sisu 8-drop that just basically decimates the board for any aggro deck. So they definitely got an anti-aggro option for Ruby Sapphire, which made it much stronger and more resilient, which is why it's one of the strongest decks in the format now. Regardless, though, in this particular matchup, you can see here we're able to flood the board early with a couple of 1-drops. Again, I explained this in the deck profile video, but you do play a good number of 1-drops because you absolutely want to play perfectly on curve if possible, whether that be multiple 1-drops on turn 2, a turn 2 drop, or like a 2 ink drop. But you definitely want to hit your 1-drop because you do play the Madam Mim package. And in a situation like this against another aggro deck, this is where something like a Madam Mim will come in huge here. You see me inking my Ursula Deceivers because, again, seeing the opponent on an aggro deck, the only thing I would anticipate to hit here is a Friends on the other side. And in my Friends particular build, they're actually not running that. They're just going straight aggro. So you see me here, think about what to do. I turn everything sideways and I'm like, okay, actually, hold on a second. Because I do need to start cleaning up the board a little bit since I wasn't necessarily able to swing tempo, but I'm in a spot where I can swing tempo because I have a Mim Fox, and this is a tempo swing card. This allows me to dominate board state here. So you can see we're going to be able to take out the Donald, retain our Mim Fox here, take the 2 damage on the Mim Fox, and then use a Pegasus to take out the Chernobog followers. And I don't even think I bothered taking out the Pascal. Yeah, I just quest and to tell my opponent, you know, if you want to take out the Pegasus on my end, feel free. Now, we did bounce back the Curse Merfolk with the Mim Fox, and we don't replay it yet because in this scenario, I'm ahead on lore. I went second. My opponent is going to have the ink advantage, but I have card advantage, and I have the lore advantage, which in an aggro matchup is pretty big. So they quest and then do a Mim Fox, and they're thinking if they want to just leave it ready or run it into my Mim Fox. And at this point, you can see why I said this is a tempo swing, because I took out their Donald, which was their turn 3 play, and then on turn 4, they haven't inked yet, but I, forced the trade on the Mim Fox. Now, to be fair, I think if I remember this matchup, it was just the other day, my opponent did say their mulligan wasn't the greatest. Yes, they curved out nicely, but then you can see here on 4, they kind of stall out. They have 2 cards left in hand, and you'll see at the end of the match what they were sitting on. So it wasn't really my opponent misplaying or anything. They just had a tough hand, and that happens. That happens a lot, actually, in Lorcana. That's why you really need to really consider how you want to build your deck and know how to mulligan into every single matchup, right? That's what's going to make the difference, honestly. Yes, you're playing on makes the biggest difference, but being able to build your deck correctly so that you can mulligan correctly into certain matchups is very important, and will be a considerable factor in winning a set championship in this set. So we hardcast the Friends because, again, I don't have a better turn 4 play, and just recast Merfolk. Seeing that my opponent was also kind of stalled out, we can continue to maintain board presence and quest, gaining an advantage over the opponent in this particular matchup. This is not a control-oriented matchup, right? I'm not necessarily trying to raise my opponent super aggressively because, in a Ruby Sapphire but in a Ruby Sapphire match, I would be needing to race them because I have to outrace their removal, right? Whereas in this particular matchup, their removal is fairly limited, and if I can just keep pace with them or outpace them while doing certain things to generate card advantage, like you saw me do that on the Mim Fox play, that's good enough. And this is a reason why you saw in the last set, or basically ever since Madam Mim Fox came out, that people, if they were playing a bodyguard, prefer to play the Steel Hercules, mainly in Amber Steel. And the reason for that is simply because the ability to trade out with a Fox, since it came out in Rise of the Floodborn, is huge. Anything with like the new Simba, or the original Simba in set 1, set 1's classic play was turn 1 Lilo, turn 2 Simba, right? Bodyguard mode, protect the Lilo, gain another 2 lore off the Lilo next turn. Well, that got blown up completely by Madam and Fox, because Fox can out the Simba right away on curve on 3, and then your Lilo's vulnerable to be taken up after that, and then you just lose a massive amount of tempo. You just go -2 for like 2 lore, right? So it completely changed the dynamic of the game, and the Donald being a 2/3 bodyguard, while it is very strong into certain matchups, especially because it gives lore to an opponent, to one of your other characters when it comes into play, so you can quest for like an extra lore on the other character. You can see that into purple or into amethyst, it does kind of suffer because of that Mim Fox interaction there, just like Simba would have. And now we just have complete control of the match here. Yeah, so we continue to ink. The opponent on 3 cards and minimal ink here also can't do much. And you saw an interaction earlier, if you were paying attention, where I think in my hand at this point I had, and I'll show it at the end, I had Jock and Kit Cloud Clicker, and I bounced back the Kit with the Mim Snake. And Kit in an aggro matchup is just like, good luck, right? Like, you just lose, because it represents, again, just like Mim Fox, a massive tempo swing, simply because whatever you develop on your board, I just bounce it back and put you a turn behind, right? I don't necessarily need to out your threats in an aggro matchup, because as long as I maintain board presence and can continue to quest, I will outrace you. And doing anything to slow you down even a little bit, a la, the bounce back with Kit, is good enough to win the game. So you can see me here quest with the Merfolk, go to 11, throw 3 damage into the castle, because I have yet again another Fox to drop to bounce back the Snake and take out the castle for free, quest with 1 with the Pegasus, and I can even redrop the Snake and bounce back like my Merfolk if I wanted to, but I'm not fearing anything coming down with Rush. Like, even if they have a 1 drop into Mim Fox, I'm fine if they want to just rush down my Fox to trade, because they can't take out the Pegasus with evasive, or my Merfolk and discard a card, discard what they bounce, because they'll be on 3 cards right now, and assuming they have the perfect hand to do that, they need to ink, play the 1 drop, and then play the Mim to bounce back the 1 drop, and then they'd be out of ink, I believe. Oh no, they have enough ink to replay. But yeah, they just end up scooping there. They had double Chernobog and a Wendy. So yeah, and I show them, like, I had the Jacques and the Kit Cloud Kicker, 2 cards that just decimate aggro. They're really in there for other matchups, right? Like, Kit Cloud Kicker can bounce back the Flynn Rider frenemy. It can bounce back just a lot of different threats, right, that would hurt aggro. But the Jock is also very critical in order to slow the opponent down during endgames and other matchups. But the opponent ends up scooping there because, yeah, there's nothing they can do. And even if they could do something, what I had in my hand was just too strong to kind of play around. So in game 2 here, now that I know what the opponent is on, I mean, he's my friend, so I know. But, like, let's say this was a blind matchup where you go in a tournament. Now that I know they're on aggro, I know that these Ursula Deceivers are definitely low value, so I can keep 1 on the mulligan for ink and just make sure I hit my 1 drop. Now, I do hit the weakest 1 drop out of them all, and I only play 2 Chernobog followers. Actually, I don't know if I'd say this is the weakest. It really depends. Between this and Pegasus. The Cursed Merfolk is obviously the strongest one, and you really want to mulligan aggressively for that in pretty much every matchup, especially if you're on the play. But here you see me quest with the Chernobog and opt not to banish to draw, because if the opponent, again, knowing that they're on aggro now, like this is the game 2 and I went first, winning game 1 on the draw, knowing that they're on aggro, if they want to throw their Kita into my Chernobog, I'm like, that's fine, right? Because then I just stop you from shifting, because if you quest with this Kita, I'm going to opt to take it out, because I want to stop you from shifting. And if you don't quest, you're just going to kind of be stuck with a readied character, and I'm going to continue to quest, so I'm going to get ahead in the lore, and then, in this aggro race, I win anyways. So yes, the Kita coming down does slow things down quite a bit for me, but you won't be able to out my board either if everything gets -3, so I'll continue to quest as well. So they do end up questing, and on 2 ink, now going to be on 3 ink, I am inclined to trade out this Kita with my Chernobog, and this is again why Chernobog is a little bit better than something like Magic Broom in my opinion, because you can stop very powerful shift lines like the Kita, like the Queen, other things like that as well. And sometimes, like I said, it can just be used to finish off something in combination with other things. So we're going to go ahead now and play a Diablo. This is when I was using the proxies, by the way, guys, if you're wondering why I'm like shifting things around. So I didn't, because this Emerald Amethyst deck is not double sleeved. My Emerald Steel deck is double sleeved, and it used the Diablo, so it was the only card that I needed to port over into this deck. And because I didn't have time to double sleeve it, I was just like, yeah, I'm just going to use the 1 drops, and then I'll just switch it for the 3 drop that I have in my other deck. So that's why, if you're wondering, I did that, and why that 1 drop Diablo went to the discard pile. That's why that happened. So the opponent quests for 4 with the Pinocchio, because the Donald comes in bodyguard mode, and again, being on the mulligan I take it back. Yeah. So again, don't be stupid like me in a tournament. You know, that would be a misplay that I'd have to just commit to. But yeah, I forgot the Pinocchio was back there because I was looking at the Donald up at the front. But what I needed to do there was quest with the Flynn, play the Fox, bounce back the Flynn, then use the Diablo to take out the Pinocchio. Obviously, right? I wouldn't leave the Pinocchio on board to quest for 3 again next turn. So that is, you know, insane value for me. I clear out the board, and again, my opponent has to bank on the fact that I don't have the Mim Fox, and this is why something like a bodyguard version of Amber Amethyst may not be something you want to play if your like metagame is heavy into purple, or mainly Ruby Amethyst. But if you're not on a lot of Amethyst in your metagame, like your local metagame for store set champs, playing an aggro deck like this could really just help like run through that tournament for you very, very easily. So during the opponent's turn, I drew because of the Diablo. If you're wondering what happened there, we're on 5 lower each. They did indeed have the Kita, which they ink. They played Dolores, which is going to draw them a card since I have an exerted character, and that's all they can do. I think they have a decent number of cards in hand, maybe like 3 or 4. But I definitely have total control, right? Because this Fox already went 2 for 1. The Diablo is going to keep my hand nice and flush, and I'm going to be able to continue to drop massive threats here. So we end up inking a goat because I don't even need the goat, and we just dump our hand on board. I got 1 card left. Merfolk, this is 6 lore readied up, right? Double Flynn and a Merfolk. I draw off their draw with the Diablo. And you know, now that I look back at this, I missed drawing a card off Diablo when they played Dolores, I'm pretty sure. So make sure you guys are paying attention in your matches, right? But this is why you play test. Catch those mistakes, right? And, you know, make sure you don't make them again. So I think I've missed a lot of Diablo triggers. And, you know, to be fair, I think even in the top 4 of the Disney Lorcana Challenge, I think some of the players playing Emerald also missed a couple Diablo triggers. I could be wrong on that, but I think when I was watching like some of the playback on the live stream or something, people in the chat were mentioning like, oh, they missed a Diablo trigger. But again, I wasn't like kind of really paying too much attention. Anyways, they play a castle, and I think they're thinking about whether they move or quest. But yeah, they just end up crashing into the Fox because they need to out my board. They need to slow me down. But honestly, like this castle isn't really threatening. It's going to get them 2 lore, but they get no card draw off of it. So I just continue to quest here. And that is 7 lore. So I double up, go to 14. I have 5 ink available and I think 3 cards in hand. Because I had 1, then I drew for Diablo, then I drew for turns. That should be 3. So I just hard cast Pegasus and ink the Deceiver, which again I know is kind of limited in this matchup. The opponent gains 2 and goes to 7. And again, on the play, this Emerald Amethyst deck is just too strong into other aggro decks here. So we end up closing that out. The opponent kind of shows me they got the Mim cards that are kind of stuck in their hand. We didn't have anything too great either, but we already had the established board and the easy follow-through play to quest for game next turn. So on screen here is the deck list, but you can see that these were very quick matches. I did not speed up this footage, and I think we finished both matches in like less than 10 minutes. I know we're on 12 minutes, but I know I showed some footage after the fact as well. So you can see, like, I mean, into other aggro matchups, into other certain matchups, you will either win very fast with this deck or lose kind of fast with this deck. And normally, if you know what you're doing and you curve out nicely, you can win a lot of matches. What I will say is again, going back to how you build the aggro deck is very important because you really do need to hit your curve and you need to know how to play into certain matchups. Like I mentioned earlier, into the Ruby matchups, or, you know, the matchups that have mass removal, even steal, you have to know how to play around certain things and play through certain things, and that's just going to come with practice. So if you're interested in those videos, you know, I will have a Ruby Sapphire matchup coming next after this one, but we're getting kind of long here on this video, so let's go ahead and wrap it up. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you again for watching. A like and a comment would be appreciated. Thank you again. Until next time, Quantum is out.